Doing well. How are you?
I am doing great. I am getting ready to go to Sacramento
Okay.
to see a Just Storage location and do a couple TikToks there. So
Okay.
that'll be neat. And then just getting ready for Christmas. How you doing?
Good. Good. Just trucking through. We got a little bit of snow today, so that makes me happy.
Oh wow.
But yeah, getting ready for Christmas, got everything wrapped up and storing it in the old Land Cruiser in the garage. So we're ready to go pretty much.
That's awesome, man. Well, in between all this, obviously, you've been sending me a couple new deals. You're great at finding these really small deals. And I would really love to kind of share my screen, go through one of the deals you sent me in Utah.
Yes.
Um, just because it's like, it's what is it priced? It's priced at $275,000, which is like a good starter facility for anybody looking to get into self storage.
Yeah, so let me tell you where I found this deal and kind of initially why I liked it and maybe don't love it in the end. But of course, I found it on Facebook. There's so many. I ended up joining as many storage groups as I can. So it's all feeds. Now it's a mixed bag. You've got sellers, actual sellers, you've got a lot of wholesalers. So there's a lot of noise to cut through. And also the sellers can sometimes add their own noise with an inflated price.
Mhm.
So coming from Facebook, the size, the price, I felt was very similar to Cheshire in your backyard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, gosh, I think it's about a 3 hour drive, maybe 2.5 hour drive from where I live today in South Salt Lake. And it's in a town called Richfield, which I've actually looked at before and did some due diligence in for another investor months ago. So I'd love to kind of share my screen and let's kind of go through this. But
Right.
anything else to kind of add before we get started?
So one caveat here is they're saying that it's going to be cash only due to
Cash
their
only.
finances, and I guess that is a common occurrence with some of the mom and pops. The books are kind of sloppy. You don't really, they're taking a lot of cash and just putting it right in the pocket, so I think that's kind of one of the things to think about when you're looking through it. Now, truth be told, there's plenty of ways around it. Is you just help them with their books. I mean, you kind of clean it up, but
Mhm.
when it comes to your tax returns that the lender might be asking for, it gets a little dicier.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and I would love to kind of hear your methodology as we go through this, but let me go ahead and share my screen over here. So I'm going to go ahead and
Right.
tilt my head here a little bit and take a look. But when you sent me this document, and to anybody that's listening only, we're looking at a document that pretty much shows, one page of a facility in Richfield, Utah, which is a smaller kind of city, I would say, in central Utah. So as we go through this document, I see that there are 33 units, 6,400 square feet. The price is 275, like you said, and they have two unit types. They have 5 by 24s, which is a very interesting unit type, and 12 by 24s, um, which again, not really. It's interesting, but typically you go by increments of 10. But again, if you are a new kind of investor into this space and you're looking for something sub 500 grand, it is very common to see kind of weird or different unit types because these unit types used to be fairly common, let's say 30 plus years ago.
Yeah, I spoke to a seller in Kentucky who has really good luck with the skinnier and long units. So I believe he had some 6 by 20s,
Mm.
and he said they go pretty quick, which again a very interesting size. But I don't know. I just feel like with that you're just kind of narrowing down your demographic.
I agree. And I mean, again, when it comes to like the REITs, like an Extra Space or a Cube Smart, they're really going to talk. If you go to a trade show and they're like, oh, yeah, you need a 10 by 10, you need 10 5 by, you're like, yeah, but for your first facility, probably not. Like,
Sure.
you're just trying to get your toe in. So, So far, so good as I'm taking a look at this. And 275, I mean, I looked at houses in this same area, and this is cheaper than a house in that town.
That's wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
income producing. So 275 and 6,400 square feet, identical to the Cheshire storage, the listing.
exactly. So let's kind of go ahead. I'll bring out my calculator real quick just so we could take a look at this. But if I were to do 18 times 50, I get 900 bucks. So we're making about, the potential on the first unit type is 900 bucks. Cool. Now, if I go ahead and I do the same for the other units, 15 times 75, we get 11 25.
Hmm.
And from there, we're going to look at the potential for the current rates for this facility right now is 2 grand a month. That's
Okay.
that's not bad. And if we were to multiply this, and this is how, not only myself or anybody else, I mean, Steve, you probably do the same thing, but I take the monthly, then I multiply it by 12 to get the annual, which, 24 grand. That's
Yep.
not crazy, but it's a good kind of start. And then what I'll do is I'll take this and divide it by the square footage. And then that's for 12 months. So I'm going to divide this again. And this is going to give me my rent per square foot like potential. So right now, what we could make with the current rates at this facility is about 31 cents to 32 cents per square foot per month.
Current.
That's currently, yes.
Right.
So from here, I would love to get into my store track software. And I went ahead and, again, anybody that's listening or watching, StoreTrack is a vendor where you can get a whole bunch of information. I have an enterprise license, so I could look at all the ones I want to. But if you just wanted to look at this on your own, I know StoreTrack, you could spend like 150 bucks to get the same report, like a one off.
Hmm. Per report.
Yeah, per report. But again, if you're just starting out, you're only looking at a couple, that's it's not terrible, but it's not great, but it gets you a lot of information. So what I do is I will go ahead and take a look at the average rate per square foot. So
Uh,
if we remember, it was 31 cents, and we are looking at a market of 49 cents.
hmm.
Yeah, so what that tells me is I could buy this facility and then we could give it a rate increase. And the delta between, 49 cents and 31 cents is it's fairly high.
Right.
So like right off the bat, I'm kind of digging this property. But before I kind of go into this, I really want to hear your side of this, Steve, on the interest rate and the lender side of things. If it's like, I kind of want to back up and say, if it's a cash only deal, or if we could do an SBA or whatever it might be, like walk us through that scenario. Like, if we really like this facility, what would we do next in terms of lending or buying or whatever?
So I think the the quick acquisition on this would be to pull together or reach out to a private money lender, or use extra capital you have. You go in, you take it down, probably some rebranding, set up your initial automation right away, and then start doing the rate increases. Um, it looks like it could use a fresh coat of paint on the doors, not much, but outside of that, I would take it to a bank to refinance it immediately. And I don't think I would go to an SBA lender. I would probably go to a local bank, or a bank in a nearby town that is familiar with the city, Richfield, and would also give you the opportunity to refinance it, and ideally use the equity if you buy it right. Use the equity that comes back from the appraisal, as your down payment.
Mm.
So essentially, you pay off your private money lender if there is one involved, and you are zero down on a long term product. This facility, I don't really think it needs much. It's hard to tell with the few pictures that we have,
Yes.
but if you wanted to do some value add, it wouldn't be much. So really, the I think that the appraisal, if you increase the income, you're increasing the appraisal value.
Okay. Yeah, and let's before we get into that, to just to finish my thought before, so we had 31 cents of what its potential is currently. The
Mhm.
market is saying 49 cents. So if we multiply that by 6,400, so if we got it to like market rates, which this is you could potentially get over it, you could get under it. But let's just, for the sake of argument, let's just go ahead and do this. So 3,136 versus the $2,000 before, and then we multiplied that by 12. You're taking the income of the facility before, which was $24,000 a year, to $37,000 a year by really potentially just raising the rents from day one. Now, this is aggressive. I wouldn't recommend this. I don't think anybody should do it this aggressive, but that's kind of the numbers that we're playing with here.
Right.
So, to get to your point, I went ahead and I looked up Holt Storage, Richfield, Utah. And I just wanted to go ahead and take a look at it on the map. So going to layers here, we're in central Utah.
Decent
And
sized town.
yeah, it is. It's about, I think it was 10,000 people, something
Really?
like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's decent.
What highway is that?
This is it shows as I-70. So near an interstate, which is great.
The Great I-70. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually going north to south at this point. I feel like I drove through this town. I mentioned that this town sound familiar.
Well, it might sound familiar because if
Yeah.
I know you lived in Colorado previously, and maybe you were
Hmm.
going down to southern Utah. I-70 is the highway that you would potentially take to
Oh
get
yeah.
down to southern Utah.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
it's
and
not a bad location there.
we have Salt Lake City up north. We have Denver to the east, and then Las Vegas to the southwest. But as I zoom in, I go ahead, I turn on the layers, and then I went, huh, this facility is in a residential area. In personally, I've never seen this
Wow.
before. But again, when you're starting out in self storage and you want to buy these facilities that are smaller, you get all different types of facilities.
Right.
So, what I did here is then I went ahead and I did my little street view just to go ahead and take a look.
Oh my gosh.
And we we are in a residential area, my friend. I mean, true
Wow.
blue, like residential area.
No sign.
No sign, no gate. Um, and the other part of this situation is if you look here, you can see the buildings, they're kind of outlined, but like you're in people's backyards.
Absolutely.
So um, it would be tough to really improve this without, making all your neighbors mad.
Right. And I would assume since there is no sign that you're not allowed to have signs, right?
Ye- yes. So it would be and I would love, I mean, especially in smaller facilities in small towns, like this one or small cities, you definitely signage can make or break you, even more so than the internet advertising.
Right. And it's interesting going back to those weird sizes, but I feel like, you know, you could stay pretty full. I guess what's the saturation? And oh boy, their reviews are pretty hurtful right now, huh? So I'd
Yeah,
say two.
Yeah, I would say there's one review that gave them a 2.
Okay.
Misty over here,
Okay.
she didn't add anything, but it was 5 years ago. But I think that's fine. I kind of like to see this. I like to
Yeah.
see no web presence because again, it's like increasing the rates. It's kind of a simple thing to do.
What's the big business over there to the right? The big parking lot.
I believe you have an IFA, the country store.
Okay. Grocery.
Yeah, so kind of like a grocery store, and then I believe you have a utility over here to the top right.
Okay. So pretty large road a block away.
Yes.
What's the competition look like in this town?
Well, that's the other part of this equation. So I go back to Store Track, and within a 5 mile radius, it's really high. So
Hmm.
for anybody that's listening, it's my barometer or what I think of in terms of demand is about 10 square foot per capita. Is like if you're below 10 square foot per capita and you find it in a market, that's a good sign. This particular market is at 32, so it is what I would call oversupply
Wow.
by a lot.
That is quite a bit. It's one of the higher numbers I've heard. I'm sure you've heard higher.
This is probably one of the highest I've seen in a minute. Unfortunate, but I've actually talked to, and this is another part of this, and I can't really do this on the podcast, but I called a couple operators. I believe it was Richfield Storage and our storage. They're
Okay.
pretty full.
Okay.
So that's a good sign. But this is where, as I'm looking at this deal, I I don't know. So far, I'm not loving it, but at the same time, you get a cash flow, and their rates are so much lower than the other kind of competition.
That's right.
So I
Should we
think
pull up a PITI calculator and just run some numbers?
PITI. Oh, you mean like a cap rate calculator?
Well, I'd like to see what the monthly mortgage would look like if there was one in place.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look. That's a great question. Okay, let's go ahead. So the principal is, let's say, 275000. How many what's like a standard commercial loan look
So
like?
SBA will do 25, but standard, I would say standard is 20.
20 years. Okay.
Mhm.
0 months. What do you think the interest rate would be on this?
So right now, I would just put 8. I
8?
mean, people are, 7.75, stuff like that, but just I like to play conservative. Tax per year, I would just put 1% right now. Just so
Was one
2750.
yeah, okay,
Oh, is this
20.
monthly or yearly? I'm sorry.
This would be yearly.
Okay.
And
Um,
then insurance.
I would just put 5,000.
Yeah, 5 grand. Yeah, that's a great idea. 5,000.
Probably less, I would say, just to be conservative. So we're looking at about 2950 a month.
Gosh. And then I think if I remember correctly, if I look at the calculator, it brings in $2,000 right now.
Hmm.
And we could get it up potentially to 31, 36. And that's if we jack the rates up as high as we could in the market.
That's right. So it's pretty tight straight from a cash flow perspective. But from our last podcast, we learned about ancillary income streams.
Yes.
So the first one being tenant insurance.
Yep.
You could look at adding. Is there ability to add a cell phone tower there?
Yep. Ability.
There could be a couple things there. One thing I saw, which there's two baseball fields behind it, and I don't
Mhm.
know, what school level or anything like that, but I wonder if those are billboard opportunities on the back of those.
Oh yeah, I would imagine so. I'm not entirely sure, but again, I mean, let's go ahead and take a quick look.
Oh, you can get down to the school.
Yeah,
Looks
it
like a nice
looks.
place.
Oh yeah, this looks phenomenal. So if I go ahead and it looks like they already have it. Storage rentals.
There we go. Storage
Right there.
rentals.
So they're
That's
already doing
great.
it. So that's fun to see. But back to your point about the PITI and the ancillary income,
Hmm.
we could, so there's 33 units, and this is like the max potential. We could potentially add, let's say, another $12 per unit. So that's another $400 a month times 12. That's like another 47.52 that you could add almost right off the bat.
I mean, and that's great when it comes to appraisals. Just helps tremendously on your value.
Yeah, and I would say that this is going to be one of the most like I a lot of operators or lenders would they really get tenant insurance and some of the other ancillary streams I talked about last time not everyone will get, but I mean 47.52 um even if we just added it to the 24 300 29,000, and then we could go ahead and ramp that up to the 49 cents per square foot, which is going to get
Hmm.
closer to 40,000. So then it starts to pencil a little better.
Then it starts to pencil. I mean, I think my guess on appraisal value once we get it to that mark would be about a $400,000 facility. So you really just have
Mm.
to have it firing in all cylinders.
Well, yeah, and actually, there were one or two things that I saw as well. Is if we go back to Google Maps, and again, you might have to get a permit from the city or get something
Hmm.
figured out, but you could potentially, and this is what I'll do in Google Maps, is I'll just go ahead and I will measure the distance. Let's say it's from here. Let's say um, measure distance to here. So that total distance between are about 64 feet. So that means we could almost add like 10 by 10s, which is what this facility sorely needs.
That's what it looks like.
And so it's like we can already kind of tell, like, okay, we could possibly add, let's say, at least another 10 by 10s to make it 43 units, and potentially a couple more over here on the north side of the property. So let's just route it out to like 50 units. And if we got it up to the 50 units, um, we'll probably be looking closer to 46,000 a
Hmm.
year rather
That's
than
great.
so we'd be effectively doubling the revenue.
Right. And I think, as you advised me in the past, it's collecting these little facilities. It's not all about, the cash flow as much as it is about, having a portfolio of these smaller properties to kind of sell off and level up.
Yeah.
You know, I think, I think it's a good starter facility, especially if you're in the area, kind of where you are. I don't hate it. Um, are there buildings along the northern tree line? Looks like there's some railroad tracks and a river there.
Yeah, so this looks like a canal that runs down.
Okay,
So and then there's a cemetery.
cemetery.
Yeah. So, so I think, I mean, like, I don't hate it either. I don't love it either. But this is what kind of killed the deal for me, and I think you should. I mean, definitely push back because I would like to hear your perspective. But we were able to get a commercial property inspection.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go ahead and scroll down here in a big asterisk. I mean, obviously, if you're going to buy any type of property, have this done, especially an older property like this. I looked at the summary, and when I look at repairs for a facility, I've seen that roofs are some of the most costly parts of repairing a facility. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in maintenance and repairs, but I've seen the bills, and they can be fairly
Mhm.
high. And
True.
if I look here, I see the big red, ticker tape there that says roof surface condition, shingles,
Shingles.
end of life. So
Mhm.
if we were to buy this facility, or anybody were to buy this facility, you'd have to potentially replace some roofs. You'd have to, and not only that, but also some other kind of parts of the facility.
Which
And
is a great point. At this point, what I would do is go back to the Google map. Um, can you zoom in on the roofs? I want to just get a look see. It's as
uh,
close as we can get.
yeah, this is as close as we can get. I
Okay.
mean,
Those don't look like shingle roofs. Um,
yeah. And
but
if
maybe they are, but that I'm not, the light blue shingle, it's not a color I've seen.
and I think what this is, and the inspector actually added in, like, okay, so here's one right here. So we could tell, like, that's a
Oh,
shingle roof.
yeah, it's like a gray.
And if
So
I go back a little bit,
in my kind of in my performa, what I would normally do is measure the square feet of the roof and try to overcompensate for the pitch.
mm,
Um, it doesn't look like there's too much of a pitch here, but you know, I don't want to give any construction advice, but calculate what metal would cost. There's a right
mm,
way and wrong way to overlay metal over shingles. That way, there's a lot of costs associated with a full tear off. Being there might be some wood replacement, but depending on your climate, sometimes you can put metal directly over top of shingle. But
oh, okay.
there should be some type of furring strips or to kind of let it breathe, let the shingle still breathe through. So that's been heavily debated before, but it
Mm,
really comes to your climate.
interesting. Yeah, and this climate in central Utah is fairly mild, closer to like more of a high desert. It still
Yeah,
gets snow, that kind of thing, but it's also not like Phoenix, or it's definitely not humid, so you don't have to worry about that. But
yeah, it's a good candidate then.
yeah, and I would ask you, I mean, as somebody who's actually replaced roofs or done work like this, I mean, how much generally would it cost for, let's say, 64,000 square feet of, light industrial, self storage? What would you think?
For a roof,
Yeah, let's say a roof,
metal roof, layover. Oh gosh, I'd probably budget anywhere between like 25 to 30 grand
25 to 30.
just to be safe. I mean, just in your numbers. I feel like that's going to be really conservative. Um, it comes down to labor,
Mm-hmm.
metal, honestly, barn metal, roof metal, it's not too expensive. If you find a good supplier, if you're getting it from like a Home Depot or Lowe's, it's going to be expensive. I've had great luck with Menards metal, and it's just coming down to labor. Who who can we find around there to place it? Sometimes you have some great Amish communities that
Mm-hmm.
specialize in metal, and they wholesale it and they can install it for a fair price too. So
That's interesting, and that's another point, is the value add. I mean, if we were to again take a look at this property and add another, 17 or so units to make it 50 units, um, I think then it starts to get more enticing. But this property isn't, I wouldn't say it's cut and dry. I mean, you got to repair a lot of the roofing, a lot more of the property itself. You got to clean it. So from the 275 up to 300 grand of potential, buying the property. Um,
right,
and then if we were to add the 17 units, it would probably cost somewhere an extra 50, maybe 25, depending, like you said, like a community that would be able to, if you had a great vendor out there.
right.
Um, but, you know, I would say, I don't know. Well, as like a real estate investor like yourself, with that kind of thing being said, how do you like this deal? Do you not like it? Would you give this a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
So I would say that this property is personally for me a thumbs down. I think I've got kind of a location problem, labor issues with the roof. I don't, but that said, I like the creative solutions of what can be done with it. And I think when you look at properties every day, like I do, like you do, you almost need to be creative. You almost need to like say, hey, you know what? This has been out there. No one's buying it. Okay, let's identify why, but let's also identify what can be done with it to make the most optimal income. It's fun. I would say if I lived in Utah,
Hmm.
which I wish I would live in Utah at some point,
Yeah.
but that this could be a great property. This could it's interesting. The one thing that scares me the way the most is really the um square foot per capita. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of like because we go to start raising rates and then people are going to run off. There's plenty of other places for them to go to. I wish there
I
was I wish there was a number that associated with that on occupancy. So, how there is 30, what is it, 32 square feet per capita.
oh yeah.
There is 32, but it's 95% full, you know.
Which might mean that demand in this particular area, like people just want to store stuff more so in this area than other parts of the nation.
They have a lot of stuff.
That's very true. And I mean, you could even get more creative in this. So I would say, before I move on to the next point, I would say no to this deal, is what
Yeah.
I would say, just because of the square foot per capita. But when we talk about other things that you could do with this property, and I'll zoom in a little bit further, you see that self storage makes up a large portion of the available square footage. But then you look at parking, it's only 16,000. So it's
Wow.
small. So my other thought here is the parking rates, they aren't terrible. I mean, let's go ahead and take a look at only parking, 32 cents. That's about what he's charging today, right?
That's crazy. Yeah.
But there isn't a whole lot of, like, there's just no supply of RV and boat parking. So although it might be smaller, you could just effectively go to your base. You could go ahead and increase those rates and say, look, everyone here, we're going to increase the rates. And then also for some of the units, we might need to have you leave because we want to go ahead and tear down a portion of the property.
Right.
So
It's
that could
interesting.
definitely be a potential kind of solution there.
Looked like there were some spaces for parking, but not much. I think if it really comes down to the numbers and kind of the final PITI. Um, if there wasn't any kind of seller finance component, it'd be something to look at. I mean, just the seller finance component being so huge, a lot of sellers that I talk to that are willing to carry
Hmm.
financing, they'll do it for 5%. If you go back to the PITI calculator and punch in five, it's a huge difference.
Yeah. That it's Well, let's go back there and go ahead and take a look. So if we bring it down to, like you said, 5%, yeah, it's going to make a big difference. It's an
Takes
extra
500
500
bucks
bucks.
off. Yeah. So yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a good, I think if you're a local, within an hour or two away, it could be something, it's not a home run,
I,
but if you're really wanting to get in right now and you've got the cash and you can take it down quick and make the improvements. Let's be honest, the improvements, the value add improvements could be done within a couple months, 2 or 3
yeah.
months, pretty
Yeah,
easily.
I agree. And again, it's not that, I mean, it's effectively full. It's got a lot of upside on the increasing the rates, but you also got to go ahead and do a lot more repairs. But I think, as we were talking about before, this is kind of, I mean, these are the kind of deals that you look at. I look at a lot, almost every single day. This one's a little interesting. I would say this might be a thumbs up if it wasn't like behind 4 to 5 to 6 houses. That
Right.
is a little different for me. I mean, to the point where I'm like, why don't I just take down all of this and then just sell the land, because the land might be worth more than the business itself, which and again, because you if you look at the houses all around here, this house I believe is worth about $325,000, which is worth $50,000 more than the actual business. So,
Right. Yeah. No, that
but
could be an interesting play.
yeah, exactly. But no, I think this is a great example of like all the different things that you could do, at least in the space. But yeah, I think for me, meh,
Thumbs down.
thumbs down.
Yeah, I'm a thumbs down. I watched we Natalie and I we saw Gladiator, and then we went and saw Gladiator 2. So we had a lot of the
My, I'll have
highly
to like wear
recommend.
all my gladiator stuff next time we do our next podcast.
Yeah, it's perfect. No, but I think
Oh,
that's a good property to analyze. You don't see a lot of these like really small ones anymore. Um, it's just so unique. But I see a lot of like bigger ones, and everyone's like $2 million, and I'm like, oh, hold on a second here. What, where, where are you coming up with that number? And I will ask them, how
mhm.
how did you come up with that figure? And a lot of times they're just, well, that sounded right until someone told me I wasn't, and I'm like, well, let's look at your books. Let's
Yeah.
see. That'll tell the story right there. So
Yeah. No, and that's interesting to me because this is, I mean, this is, I think the seller would be friendly. I think the real estate agent would be friendly. And I genuinely like the smaller deals because of that. And also because I don't have a lot of people I'm syndicating with too.
yeah, and I guess the thing is when you look in residential and building, even custom home building, people are, what's your price per square foot, price per square foot? And I like to look at it in storage, because you've got your, I guess, class A, class B, class C, purchase price per square foot, where I'd like to be.
Mhm.
And then it's like, okay, well, if there's value add, do you ever look at price per square foot, for the value add as well? Like, are you buying at $31 a square foot, but you have to replace all the roofs? So how
Yeah.
much price per square foot does that add in the value add as well? And I know it's not always cut and dry like that, but I feel like there could be some good, you know, rules and around that.
Well, I think that's a good point. And one thing that we didn't really look at were the values of other self storage facilities in that area. And that would be another thing to kind of look at. But if you're coming up with 400 grand without doing a whole lot of value, I mean, with just the couple of things that we would do to the facility, obviously
Hmm.
replacing the roof, I don't think that deal looks that bad even then. So I would I would still kill the deal just because of the reasons that we stated, particularly the oversupply, which can be concerning. But again, as I talk to individuals that actually live in Richfield, like I did earlier this year, it seems like people really like their storage, and it just might. I guess if somebody put a gun in my head and said, "Well, how would you change this?" I would probably demolish the buildings, or at least some of them, and put in more RV and boat kind of parking if I could get away with it, because it seems like there's such a huge demand in their area for that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know how the lot doesn't look too big.
Yeah. Well, before we go, let's go ahead, and before we let everyone else go, I'll go ahead and share my screen one more time and we'll just measure it real quick and see if it's even feasible.
Final measurement.
Final measurement. Yep. So let's say from here, let's say measure distance from here to here. You're talking, was that 80 feet?
Okay.
That's not bad. So you got, I guess your standard like RV boat starts at like 10 by 20.
Hmm.
So this isn't terrible. But the real measurement would be like lengthwise. That's about 276 feet.
Okay.
So that's not terrible. I mean, it's like
No.
20 plus spots that you could kind of fill in there, and you'd be able to do like another 15 spots in the back and maybe some over here. So you're talking another like 50, 60 units,
Okay.
which
S-
not bad.
No, it's more than they have now at the same price.
Yeah. Well,
So
also, it looks like you could already add some RV and boat there at some parts of the property. So
yeah.
maybe it pencils out a little bit more. But I think that this is a great kind of example of like going through this kind of raw and talking through this deal and kind of letting all of our listeners know that, it's not impossible. This is 275 grand
Yeah.
and probably, less than your house. So
Honestly, if it was available for SBA and they were wanting 10% down, I mean, 27,000 buying it for less than a Honda Civic, to
that's
get
that.
a source of cash flow coming in. And then also your PITI would be lower because we put the full amount purchase price. And I'm sure there's some wiggle room in there for a cash buyer as well. Taking the inspection report and saying, hey buddy, I have to take the replace all the roofs, that's going to be pretty expensive, can you do a little bit better? I there's a little bit of meat there.
I think so too. And yeah, I think this is another one where we did kill the deal, but I might think about it because I mean, I live in Utah. And if they was an SBA, then I'd be all over it. But that's all right. There's always more. So,
Sure. Sure, good times.
all right, Steve, thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Andrew, you have a good day, sir. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
See you, bud.
Woo.